The highly authentic World War II FPS Hell Let Loose just got a new winter map that takes place in the Battle of the Bulge, just in time for holiday season, and it offers some pretty big new features like dynamic weather. It's been a little while since I last played this game, and competition from other military shooters has really ramped up. How good is Hell Let Loose's new map and update, and how does it stack up against the competition? Let's find out. So update 16 for this game has been out for a little while, and it's a big one. On top of adding a new map, it also adds a free look mechanic, dynamic weather, a pretty substantial improvement to the server queue process, new soldier uniforms, and of course, tons of bug fixes. The big shiny item, of course, is the new map, Eisenborn Ridge. In real life, this was the location of key battles between the US and German forces during the Battle of the Bulge. In-game, it's a countryside map with villages and buildings dotting the landscape. The sense of atmosphere and scale in Hell Let Loose is, in my opinion, unparalleled when it comes to World War II games. And Eisenborn Ridge adds to that accomplishment with truly impressive visuals. The setting sun filtering through the snowy tree lines is beautiful. The deep red color makes it look like a bloodstain on the backdrop of a cloudy sky. It's like playing in a landscape painting, but it still feels like an authentic World War II battle. The sense of cold isolation is also really well communicated. The ambient sounds are sprinkled throughout the landscape, with animals chirping up here and there. And of course, when the artillery strikes come in and send plumes of smoke and dirt hurtling through the air, it just feels crazy realistic. Now, this isn't Hell Let Loose's first winter map. Foy and Kharkov have both been in the game for a while, but I think Eisenborn Ridge brings a lot of critical design improvements to the experience that those previous maps didn't quite nail. The additional cover between objectives is a big deal. There's also lots of small elevation changes with hills, mounds of dirt, and craters to help you break line of sight when crossing open terrain. One of the interesting design elements that put these devs on the map in the first place was their attention to detail and accuracy, with one of their first maps following topographical World War II locations exactly. The downside is that it led to a lot of wide open, difficult terrain to try and cover that didn't necessarily cater well to gameplay, catered well to authenticity, and I think maybe the devs are learning how to add in some more craters and fun terrain elements that still make the game feel authentic but cater more to the gameplay. I really enjoyed my time maneuvering between objectives, utilizing the cover to pick off straggling enemies, and sort of strategically move my way up to the forward positions and take out anyone there. It was kind of great taking shots and being able to drop into cover and even return fire from a position of relative safety somewhere other than the objectives. I won plenty of firefights like this, and it was honestly a blast just having so many more good opportunities for firefights scattered throughout the entire map. Now, getting back into this game, I was reminded that it is certainly a more hardcore military shooter, and it's not going to hold your hand while you get used to some of the brutal, sometimes one-sided combat. I still died plenty to enemies that I either couldn't see or didn't expect to encounter. Playing smart and waiting to advance with your team is sort of the better way of playing, but it can get old just staring into a tree line for several minutes waiting for enemies to reveal themselves. Fortunately, it's not quite as big of a thing on this new map where the pacing just feels a little bit nicer. And there's more fortified areas around the map that also make for great spawn point drops. So rather than having to hide them in a bush somewhere in an open field, there's usually better options that mean you're not going to spawn into death traps quite as frequently. And I think one of the reasons why players look forward to new map content so much with first-person shooters is that they can really dictate how much you're enjoying the game. And I gotta say that this new map has been balanced extremely well. Some other maps in Hell Let Loose I will just straight up quit out of because they're so unenjoyable to spawn into a meat grinder over and over again, but this map just feels like it's starting to understand the game pacing better and how to build out cover systems more properly. Then again, I could have just been having some lucky rounds where players haven't totally figured out all the meta yet, but for the most part, it did feel like the devs are starting to understand map design better. Now, there's a handful of other features that were added in Update 16. Dynamic weather is probably the big one. Eisenborn features 4 distinct weather varieties. There's light, medium, heavy, and blizzard snow. These weather varieties transition throughout a match and mostly affect your visibility. Personally, I'm not a huge fan of games that use distance fog too aggressively to limit visibility, but since it's not a permanent condition for the map, it's kind of cool to see the gameplay change due to the shifting weather. The heavier weather can help your team cross wide open terrain and kind of open up new flanking routes and sneak through the tree lines. But for actual spotting of enemy players or knowing how visible you are to other players, the fog just adds that layer of complication to the experience that doesn't always feel necessary. I think I prefer more shorter-lived fog experiences that can be taken advantage of quickly and then otherwise dissipate, because if it sticks around for too long, the gameplay just becomes fully chaotic. One of the other new features with the recent patch is the ability to do stuff while you're queued up to join a match. Sometimes it could take a little while to join a queue, and being locked into a single screen and not being able to do anything else. Now you can browse the menus, adjust your settings, even search for other servers while you're queued up for this one if it's taking too long. It's just such a nice quality of life improvement that you don't realize how important it is until you don't have it. The other new gameplay feature is free look. This lets you look around with your head without having to actually change the direction or stance of your character. It's a pretty common feature in most tactical FPS games, and I was actually surprised to learn that Hell Let Loose didn't already have it. Often using free look can help your player move a little bit quicker in certain directions and also move the player model less. So if you're, say, prone on the ground trying to blend into the environment, but you want to look around without your character model shifting all over the place, this can be really helpful. Now, I have jumped into Hell Let Loose here and there over the years, but the last time I made a video on it was when the game left early access almost 3 years ago. And back then, my #1 complaint was the performance issues that plagued the game and seemed to escalate as new maps were introduced that ran horribly. I remember the Stalingrad map that released with the 1.0 update just ran so poorly it was barely playable. But since then, the game changing hands to a new studio may have had a positive impact. Hell Let Loose runs much better these days, though I still did have some hitches while playing. It's also hard to know how much of the improvement is optimization in the game versus me just getting better computer hardware. Now, of course, Hell Let Loose doesn't exist in a vacuum, and these days it's facing some pretty stiff competition from games like Squad 44 and Enlisted. All 3 of these games could easily be mistaken for one another, but they're pretty different in terms of their core mechanics. Hell Let Loose has striking visuals, but also feels the most basic in boots on the ground. Squad 44 has more complex base building systems and supply management, and Enlisted gives you AI squads to control and faster paced action. So while they're all competing to have a authentic World War II FPS tactical experience, they're kind of approaching it from different angles. For me, Squad 44 is kind of the best of both worlds. You have the strategy and teamwork of the hardcore FPS, but also the pacing feels a little bit faster than Hell Let Loose, which I can appreciate. In my opinion, Hell Let Loose's biggest strength is its commitment to the authentic feeling. It definitely beats the other titles in this regard. Sure, you can still go off on your own and take on multiple enemies as a solo Rambo dude, but you'll always be more successful sticking with your teammates and attacking objectives as a cohesive unit. It's a game that demands a little more patience than I think most players would expect, and it can lead to player frustration, especially with new players or even myself coming into the wrong map and not wanting to wait for minutes to push across a field until there's enough teammates around to support me. The new update and the new map, though, improved the pacing pretty substantially, and I'm curious to see where this game goes down the road. It's definitely got the framework to become even better than it is right now, and I've enjoyed my time in it. I'd be curious to know if you guys are playing World War II FPSs, and if so, which game? Let me know in the comments, and if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to drop me a like, subscribe for more content like it, and ding that notification bell to beat the YouTube algorithm with me. Up next, check out this video on Squad 44. It's actually making some pretty big changes in the near future, and I'm excited to see its next big update as well. As always, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. This is Level Cap, signing off.